Honestly, I think he just played a really, really long game. Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. We're going to talk today about BRYAN Kohberger, as much as we positively actually have to, because we need to not forget, in the midst of all the crazy going on right now, that he is not the main character in this story. He's the villain. The main characters are Kaylee and Maddie and Xana and Ethan, and that does not need to be forgotten. I'm not going to discuss a lot about this person, because he doesn't deserve that much attention. We only really need to know the bare minimum. And what really matters here is what was found, evidence-wise, that led them to Mr. Kohberger, and what type of punishment is actually going to be handled down in this case. BRYAN Kohberger was arrested on the morning of the 30th at 3 o'clock in the morning whenever SWAT busted into his family's house. See, he was actually over in Pennsylvania, which is over 2,500 miles away from where all of this actually took place. Now, he was going to college at the Pullman College, which is only about 15-ish, maybe a little less miles away from where the University of Idaho is. And even though we don't know the connection between Mr. Kohberger and the victims, Kaylee's family has apparently now come out and stated that after a few hours of learning his name and doing some digging, there is a possible connection that they did find between BRYAN and Kaylee. They're just not comfortable discussing it right now. So we just don't need to be trying to assume about what it is. And let the family just tell us what they found. Now, we do know that for some strange reason, BRYAN's father flew over from Pennsylvania to the area just to drive back with BRYAN in the Hyundai Elantra, the almost 2,500 miles away to Pennsylvania, where of course he was then caught. So you have to wonder, what was the reasoning for that? Like, did he call up his dad and be like, hey dad, you want to have a road trip for Christmas? And his dad just didn't think that it was abnormal behavior? Because why would you need your car 2,500 miles away just for a holiday break? It's a little weird. They apparently got pulled over twice in Indiana. He was supposed to be driving back home by himself after the holiday was over. Now, Mr. Kohberger's lawyer has come out and stated that this little road trip was planned way before the incident happened. But that doesn't mean that BRYAN didn't make sure it was planned, because he knew what else he had planned. But something else I also wonder about is the weapon used. Now, it could have been found at this point at either the home where he was taken into custody or at his place of residence by the college where he lives. We don't know right now. Hopefully, law enforcement has found it. But if they didn't, I'm almost wondering if this trip was planned so that he had almost 2,500 miles in which he could discard it. That's a possibility here, guys. Now, Brian Enton came out and stated that whenever BRYAN was arrested, he apparently asked if anyone else had been arrested. But according to law enforcement, they do believe at this point that he acted completely alone. And he probably did. That was just a little psychological thing to mess with the cops. That's what these guys do. Now, in my opinion, this guy just played a very, very, very long game. And this is where I'm going to talk about the parts of his past that I deem are important. There's not going to be a lot, just a few little details. Now, some channels have dug up some things about his childhood. His family's had more than one bankruptcy, and oh, he was a little chubby bullied kid. But guess what? I was a chubby bullied kid. I didn't have the best upbringing, and I've gone through several traumas in my adulthood, as most of us have. We don't use those kinds of excuses and things from our past as reasons to go and unalive people in their sleep. So I don't care what comes out about whatever this guy seems to have might have gone through. There's no excuses. He's an almost 30-year-old man, and I'm telling you now, this has been planned for a very long, long time. There have been people that knew him back in middle school, in high school, and in all the other colleges that this man has attended that have come out and given the public some information. But what we have learned is that he was an overweight, bullied kid in his middle teen years. And then he ended up with some sort of H addiction, according to other people who knew him back in those days. And he lost a bunch of weight, started taking psychology courses whenever he was still doing community college stuff in his hometown. And then he ended up actually graduating the graduate program of criminal justice just this past June of 2022. And then immediately basically enrolled himself in the college that he was attending at the time of the incident for his PhD. Now, there's a crazy study that he posted online to try to get people that had committed certain crimes to basically let him ask them a whole bunch of questions so that he can figure out what type of personality traits and emotional issues, basically, from what I'm understanding from reading this crap, that people have in their brain that manipulate the choices that they make while committing a crime. Not what makes you commit the crime by not choosing right over wrong, but what choices you make during the crime. That's very interesting verbiage to me. In my opinion, him doing this gave him a whole lot of details about what to do and what not to do whenever he was ready for his little fantasy to play out. I believe wholeheartedly that when he lost weight and apparently got off of his addiction and started taking all these courses, it's because he finally came to terms with who he was in his brain. That's why. He found his calling and he wasn't scared of it anymore. This is not something that this person just started having feelings of recently. This has been going on since probably before middle school for this guy. But other than that, there's no actual concrete information that has been released since his arrest. We just have to wait. Now, I know that Chronicles of Olivia's channel states that they did a very in-depth emotional interview with Kaylee's family, and I think the date of release for that interview is on the 5th. I'm going to be very interested in watching this. I'd like to close this video out with this, though. There's been a whole bunch of animosity since this arrest. A lot of channels getting called out for the way that they called suspects out, and a lot of channels probably do deserve the flack that they are getting. But people do need to understand that having healthy conversations and asking questions and spreading awareness on cases like this is perfectly okay. We can ask questions about the ex-boyfriend and what happened and what the timeline is based on the information that law enforcement gives us. They give it to us knowing that we're going to talk about it. Now, they only had about 4 or 5 days before the arrest of Mr. Kohberger to where anyone close to the victims was no longer going to be looked at. They couldn't tell us that. They couldn't come out and say anything about that because then the person would know, oh shit, they're coming. And they couldn't have that happen. So it's perfectly fine how this all played out, in my opinion. And there was nothing wrong with us asking questions about the food truck footage or about the body cam footage that we saw or about the hoodie guy and how strange he acted. A lot of channels went way overboard. Yes, I completely agree. And to be honest, the way this case ended up doesn't surprise me. The more that we kept having all these different paths and puzzle pieces that could fit perfectly, the more I started to wonder if it was really just all a coincidence. This channel knows that I already had my doubts about it being Jack. Now, when it comes to BRYAN, psychopaths, those are completely different when it comes to physical strength. You'd be surprised how much the mentality of your brain can determine what you can do in the physical world. It's going to be interesting to see the actual details here. Once Mr. Kohberger is back in Idaho and has been served, then we're going to be able to find out a little bit more details, such as the probable cause affidavit and a little bit about what they actually had on him prior to this arrest. We're still not going to be told too much. There's going to be a lot ahead in this case, you guys. And I know that we are very, very impatient, but that's probably something we should all work for in the new year, right? A little bit of patience. That's it for now. See y'all.